kind of the guidelines that we're going to go. There's going to be a 2-minute opening from each of the candidates, 1-minute closing, and 1-minute answers for everybody that has questions for the particular candidates. Our order for opening is Wayne, then Cam, then Daryl, and our closing order will be Daryl, Cam, and then Wayne. So we'll get underway with the introductions and then open it up to the floor for any questions from the community. All right, so thank you very much, and please keep it civil. Gloves up.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hear me okay? All right. Thank you for attending tonight's all candidates meeting. My name is Wayne LeBroy. While I had hoped to be there in person, I was unable to attend due to a serious illness in my family. And my family is important to me, so I appreciate the understanding. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers, volunteers, and my fellow candidates for making this forum possible. How are we doing?
Yeah, you're good.
Ashcroft is without a doubt the best community my wife Linda and I have ever lived in. Some of you may recognize me as that early morning runner in the fluorescent rain gear, while others know me from coffee chats or at the bakery. No matter how we have met, you know that I care deeply about the village and its residents. Although I'm a relatively newcomer to Ashcroft, I bring with me over 40 years of experience serving on and with municipal councils. I understand the considerable time commitment required and the importance of collaborating with both council members and the administration to strengthen our community. Ashcroft deserves thoughtful stewardship. I support gradual, community-led improvements to our infrastructure that will promote growth but preserve our village's distinctive character. Growth should not come at the expense of what makes Ashcroft unique, and I will work to ensure that any changes reflect the club.
We do have his speech, so we can finish saying it. Administration. Ashcroft deserves thoughtful stewardship. I support gradual, community-led improvements to our infrastructure that will promote growth but preserve our village's distinct character. Growth should not come at the expense of what makes Ashcroft unique, and I will work to ensure that any changes reflect the collective will of our residents. I am running for council not to change Ashcroft, but to serve it. My approach is rooted in thoughtful stewardship, gradual improvements, and making decisions that truly reflect the will of our residents. If elected, I am committed to working closely with fellow council members and the village administration to assess our current infrastructure needs and to prepare responsibly for Ashcroft's future, always respecting our community's character and values. This evening is about listening, asking questions, and engaging in respectful dialogue. Thank you for being part of this important process.
Next is Cam.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. Thank you also to the Incanagum people for allowing us to hold this event on their territory, their traditional territory. Also, to thank Daryl and Wayne for the opportunity to be a candidate running against them for one position. And thank you to Doreen for her time and service with the community, and hopefully we can fill her shoes. I have ideas that I believe will help our community deeply, and I'm sure that those concerns and ideas will be addressed by the questions that come from all of you tonight. So I'll wait for that. However, our job as council is to counsel. It is to listen to you. It is to be the voice between our community and our administration. They're the professionals. We are the people that are going to listen to you and attempt to facilitate some of that. So, over the 22 years that I've lived here, I have attempted to make most council meetings, attend most council meetings, special meetings, public events pertaining to the politics of our community. I, for reasons that I laid out in the questions in our newspaper, was unable to do that as a village employee for 20 of those years. In the meantime, Debbie and I have run a car show for 7 years, looked after the Terry Fox run for 7 years, developed a automotive business as Skip was failing and asked us if we could step in and help him. We decided that that was a good time for us to open Friendship Auto. And as life turns out, now we have the opportunity to do that, for Debbie to carry on as the chair of Thompson View Manor Society and continue that housing project with her board on the other side of town, and hopefully for me to step into my role as councillor, fill the shoes until our next election, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Hello?
Next is Darryl.
I want to thank everybody for being here.
Yeah.
You want to use this mic? I was born in Terrace, BC, raised in Kamloops. Moved to the U.S. for college, and I'd always anticipated coming back and living in the area. And about 20 years ago, my family had moved from Kamloops to here. And I remembered Ashcroft as a kid. I remember seeing it when it was aggressive in the late 70s and early 80s. And you could see the advertisements on Kamloops television. You knew that the rodeo was going on here, and you saw an active town full of businesses. My brother, he was just up here this weekend, and we were talking. He had worked, first off, my father worked as a conductor on freight in CN, and we'd go by here and wanted to one day retire here because of the weather. He noticed the weather was different in this town compared to just a few miles out of town. But my brother worked on the gang. There was a big derailment in 1978 out here, and that was his first experience with the town. And we were talking about the differences that we remember. For us, you could blame the Coquihalla for a lot of things, but there's been a slow decline in overall in Ashcroft over 40 years. And that, I think it's time to reverse. It's time to start being aggressive in selling this town and the assets in this town. And that's what I'm looking to do. Thank you.
Yes, well, move on to the question part of this evening. Does anybody have any questions for any of the candidates? Specific or just questions?
Hi, my name's Kevin Beadham. I've been a resident here for 7 years going on, but I've had a family attachment here for over 20, 30 years. My question, first of all, gentlemen, thank you for stepping into a breach. It's an often unappreciated job, and if you gotta blame someone, you blame a politician. But that being said, this voting for this is for 1 year. So 1 year is a short time to build what you need. But in that time, there's going to be a learning curve. Even Wayne, with his 40 years of experience, every council you work with in every village or every city you work with is different. How will you get up to speed, do what you want, and get ready for the next election in a year? And that's a 1 minute question to each candidate. Please, thank you.
So can we start with Wayne on this one, please?
Sure. You have to start, in my humble opinion, you have to start by actively looking at what's been done, where we're going, but you need to be looking strategically and preparing strategically for the next set, right? Where have we been? What do we need to do? Where our priorities are? And work within council to get the information out and consensus through council and back to the public. You can't change the world in a year or 14 months. You can't do that. But what you can do is prepare the way and start to do some of the homework and the legwork that needs to be done.
Cam?
I think in my place, Kevin, thank you for the question. I knew your dad and I know your brother. I think in my case, because of having 15 years with the village crew and having been self-employed at both ends of that career, I think I'm in a pretty good position with my knowledge of the infrastructure, monetary knowledge, watching the council work over those 20 years. I think that in a 1-year span, I may be a little bit ahead of the other two as far as catching up on our local council procedures, et cetera, Not to say that I'm going to be any better than they will, just that I have that experience. And when it comes to talking about infrastructure in the village, roads in the village, what it's like to run a generator in the middle of the night when there's a power outage, that type of thing, and understanding that commitment, I've been there. So I think it puts me in a position to be able to carry on more quickly than the other two perhaps, but time will tell. Thank you.
And Daryl?
Well, there's no doubt about it that Cam has an advantage when it comes to the mechanics of the town. But my experience, I think first off, I want to take a different approach than what was said by Wayne and maybe implied by Cam. I think you could get going right away. I'll tell you how I figured this out. I did something that nobody here in the town had done. So I went down to for example, down to the museum, and I talked to the curator there. He said in 5 years of curating that museum, nobody from the city has ever come down and asked him how would that be improved. You know what he said? First thing, he needs a better sign. The sign up on the hillside is too small, you can hardly see it, nobody knows what kind of world-class museum this little town has. That's a low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. There's a lot of that can be done, just through signage and what have you. And then these kinds of things, we just had, this summer, we had the Coquihalla shut down. And we have people coming up through the Fraser Canyon. And they would know nothing about this town. And through simple signage, that way we can instantly start putting people down, making the turn down the hill here. These are the kind of ideas I want to put forth.
Does anyone else have a question?
Jim Duncan, lived here since 2005, and I appreciate you guys running for council. It's sometimes a thankless job, sometimes it's really good. One thing is, two people said slow development. I think if something comes up, you have to grab it. I'd like your feedback on that. We've had subdivisions maybe going for years, and we need housing. Is there something we can do to speed them up? Thank you.
We'll start with Daryl this time and go backwards.
Well, I agree. I think the time is that there has to be a sense of urgency, in the sense that we have a hospital that is, that is really the lifeblood. That's where this whole community starts. This is what the number one selling asset to an aging population. That has to have growth. You have to show, we were maybe going to be at 1,700 people here, but it would be nice to at least get up over 2,000 again, something that would approach the numbers we had in the early 80s. That kind of growth gets noticed. And that, so yeah, I believe you're right. But so I see that, there is, currently they're going through, looking at zoning issues within the town, how to maybe clear obstacles out of the way to get some of that growth. And so there is progress being done, from what I can tell. But you're right, we have we have how we get that growth. There's a lot of economic factors that are at play that are not, that we can't control, you know, from interest rates or what have you. But what we can control is maximizing our assets, our community assets, that we can say, are we getting the most out of this? Is this going to help sell this community and that to others, so the developers come in here and what have you? And that's what it starts with, what we can control, and that's what the assets that we have as a community here.
Next is Cam.
Thanks for the question, Jim. The only reference I really made to slow at any point was in my answers in the newspaper. I believe that the way I answered it then was that we should be steady, progressive, and not overly conservative, although that was the word that was posted in the paper. I think that everybody understands that we need to drive development. I think that we have some safety concerns that hopefully somebody asks about, but I'm going to kind of preventively address right now. I think before we can do a whole lot of development to bring people to town, to stay in town, we have to figure out some of the safety issues like the egress and access to the mesa, the truck traffic and egress and access to the terminal, and the sidewalk situation with egress and access that way. And I think Darryl is absolutely right that we need to bring people, we need to grow the population of this town again. But if we do it too quickly and mismannered, we're already screaming about the infrastructure in the ground. A lot of people are concerned about the road surface, not the sidewalks I just mentioned. And if we don't deal with those factors fiscally, monetarily, prudently, then what's going to happen is that we're going to outgrow what we have now, and thus the progressive conservative thinking, rather than jump into the pump. We have signage at the highway. I'm not sure that we have to draw them in with signage any more at this point than we have in the past, but we need to be prepared for everybody that wants to come here. And again, as councillors, take the community voice back to our fellow councillors in order to present to the professionals at administration. Thank you.
Right. Wayne, it's your turn.
All right, yeah, and thank you for getting back on. I believe that as councillors, we have to be community boosters. It's an excellent question, Jim, thank you. We have to be community boosters. We have to promote our community. We have to look for opportunities to market our community. I agree with Cam on the safety factors, but there are ways that we can prudently plan what we do have and modify and change. But in other words, we have to sell our community to the public. We have a unique community and the ability to draw people in. We just need to do it better. Thank you.
Are there any more questions from?
Hi, Debbie Toohey. My question is, we have facilities like the parks, the arena, the pool, that sort of thing, but for us to hold any events, we have nowhere for people to stay. They can't stay at the River Inn. Both B&Bs now are no longer running. What do you see as a solution to that problem? To everyone.
We'll start with Cam this time, please.
Thanks again. There was a hotel feasibility study done, I think maybe you were on council at that point, and we still kind of had the River Inn going at that point, and we still did have at least two bed and breakfasts, because both of them were still running then. So we've done the feasibility study and didn't have much luck getting anyone in. It has been addressed recently at one of the council meetings and in some of the paperwork that I saw. It is a major issue. There is absolutely no doubt about it. So we have two options. We either attempt to entice someone to build, which we've looked at, or we attempt to entice someone to purchase one of the most beautiful pieces of property in the province, which is the River Inn as it is. Under the bridge, on the water, second floor is not usable at this point. Restaurant facilities, a little bit difficult to get in and out of in the wintertime. However, there's a standing option there and a study's in place. But until we find somebody that thinks it's feasibly possible, we're not going to, we are going to have to push hard to get somebody to step in here and start that kind of a development. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that it's something that, again, is going to take a group of us to do, not a councillor standing in front of you tonight. Thanks.
Next, we'll go with Daryl.
I agree in the that you have to sell the town to develop it. That would probably start with going to they have let's say with fairs or what have you. You have these trade fairs and what have you like this. You got to go aggressively go out there and sell the town, sell what this is to developers. That means showing up at these places and actually getting a booth and brochures saying why you're going to come here and invest. That's how you do it. In the meantime, we know their hotels they're down in Cache Creek. You'd have to partner with them. So any kind of event and what have you. This is they got a tourism. Sorry, I'm gonna fly. They got a tourism board there, and so yeah, work with Cache Creek Tourism, what have you, and fill the need through that. As the two towns should be working as closely together as possible, and on anything, because especially, but like I said, for us to look at this. It shows you have to go out and sell this town aggressively, and that means showing up to places where people are. You have the brochures, you have the why they should be developing in this town, and here's the opportunities, and you sell it as an ecotourism platform. We have trails sitting up here unmarked. We could mark these trails up. We could where you come in and it says, okay, here's an intermediate, here's a hard trail, here's an easy trail, all this kind of stuff. They do this in Kamloops. They've sold that biking and what have you. This is the kind of stuff that we should, but all tie in with this idea of tourism and like I said, we find our partners. Our partners in the meantime is right down the road at Cache Creek.
And Wayne.
All right, I appreciate the question. It's an excellent question. One of the things that we found when it was at the terminal was the fact that the housing was a concern, and the lack of housing, the lack of interim residency housing was a concern that we needed more. I agree with both my fellow candidates that we need to market, we need to sell. I would take it one step further. I think we need to prove the economics and the feasibility of having an institution of the size. Maybe it's a fact that we look at the River Inn, we look at it and see what it takes, but we need to be able to actually show the financial viability of the project and of the inn. So we can take it one step further. Money will attract, the financial return will attract. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? In the back there.
David Dirksen. Had the experience of having my wife on council for 2 terms, and one of the things I noticed was that a lot of what the residents here really need falls into the gaps between what is the municipal mandate, what is the provincial mandate, and what is the federal mandate. And so all of this stuff is in the gap. And the only way that I can see to get out of that is what some communities have started doing, which is partnering to fill those gaps, even though it isn't the municipal mandate. Do you think there are any opportunities for us to do that in order to be able to create the structures we need and the services we need? And what are the partnerships that would make that happen?
We'll start with Carol this time.
All right. Well, the partnerships. Let's give you an example. I'll go back to the hospital. We look at some services that have been promised that we would have here aren't being delivered or allowed to do certain type of testing and what have you from the interior health of the province. They ran, in my opinion, they basically ran off with equipment out of this place. It's like thieves in the night, and we allowed it to happen. So how do you do that? So some of the stuff he's talking about is who the partner. Well, we start with the partners that are around us. If I was going to advocate for the hospital, I start with the native bands that are bordering us here. They have a large voice. We partner with these the Bonaparte, the Ashcroft band, the Cook River band, and then we look at the hospital as a regional. We Clinton, Cache Creek, but also we partner up with Kamloops. I got a childhood friend that's a doctor that's on city council in Kamloops. They're going through renovations at Memorial Hospital, and they're running less ER beds than they did in the 70s. Now is the time where we have people that could get tested here, but instead they're being taken down to the ER in Kamloops, where there could be an 8-hour backup there. That doesn't just affect our health here. That affects Kamloops also. Those people have to sit there for 8 hours. So how do you take a small town where there's a village where there's 1,700 people, say, well, our voice could be lost when it comes to provincial politics, but where we could have, we show them the need that they need. Kamloops needs this hospital to be more efficient, and we get them to help advocate with us. And that becomes the 1,700 people, all of a sudden, to 170,000 people when you take in surrounding areas, right? That changes. That's how you bridge those gaps.
Next is Cam.
Thanks, David. Bridging those gaps is something that happened in the last few weeks with the UBCM. Our council and whomever of us that is elected will have the opportunity after a year of service to be able to go to UBCM and speak to those ministers. Those ministers have the ear of their federal counterparts. Until I'm there, I don't know what I'm going to be able to say that's going to push them in any particular direction, and I'd be lying to try and say that now. I know at the UBCM this year the focus was on the unhoused. Looking at the figures from the unhoused, extrapolating backwards from the figures of 7 million people in our province, 26,500 people homeless, we should in our town right now have about 3 people per 1,000, which is 5 people homeless, and I think I can name them all. So we are right there. We've had the ear of UBCM to speak about that, and hopefully we'll see some fallout from those discussions, or some positivity from those discussions. I shouldn't say fallout, that's not very positive. So, bridging the gaps, just like bridging the gaps on anything we're going to do here, is going to be difficult from the municipal level, but well worth the drive. And we have to push that drive. Darrell is absolutely correct. And that should be a feasible thing to do with a strong council and an administration that's put us in a very good place to push this forward. Thank you.
And Wayne.
Thank you. I believe that we can partner also with industry as well as with the province. One of my former jobs, most recently, I put together the human resources plan for the mine expansion. And looking at the resources that are available in the local communities and the options and opportunities that we have, we can partner more closely with industry and make sure that we're front and center in their plans and their strategic initiatives. I also think that we can take these initiatives and marry them or work with provincial government, with the regional district, to develop some options that will bring business to this town as well, to Ashcroft, and support it. And I think there's real opportunity there to partner not only with the province, but also with the industry. So I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Any more questions?
John Roberge, I've been part of Ashcroft Community on and off for the past 35 years. Semi-retired and currently serving as a school trustee. Appreciate the comments all of you have shared with us tonight, your thoughts and your visions. In terms of education, I'm curious to know your respective educations.
Can we start? Well, we'll start with Wayne this time.
Good Lord. I like Mark Twain. Mark Twain says you put your education in your pocket and only pull it out when you need it. I started out as a logger, and I went back to school after I got my PhD logging on the coast. I have a BA in economics. I have a master's in industrial relations from Queen's. I have an MBA from Royal Roads, and last December I completed a master's of applied law from SFU. But I'm still learning.
Cam?
I studied economics and commerce at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. I have an associate degree in turf entomology from Ohio State University under Dr. Harry Nimchuk. I am a Red Seal tradesperson, Red Seal mechanic, and I was an instructor for what is now called Fraser Valley University as the relief instructor for the mechanics program there for 3 years before Debbie and I went into business together and ended up moving to Ashcroft. Thank you.
And Daryl?
I got a degree in journalism and history from Western Washington University, Bellingham. And I received a teaching certificate, honorary teaching certificate out of George Washington University over from one of the books I wrote. I've written 9 books. One on Kawataki and the Maritimes and its ideas around the concepts of Black nationalism and early Canadian history. It's considered a landmark and groundbreaking book. That is, worked for Microsoft in the 90s and early 2000s. I have several tech certificates and what have you. As a level 3 systems engineer for security on the internet security side for several years, and went into work for various tech companies throughout the Seattle area and what have you. Like I said, currently working on still continuing writing and pursuing that. That is my primary income.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Sure. Debbie Dewey again. I'd like to know, each one of you, if you have been to the Mesa Vista Park And what do you think can be done with that? I have a concern over, I came here as a young person, but since then married, had children, and now have grandchildren. And some of our parks I feel are pretty bad. So what can be done with the Mesa Vista Park for improvement, and how are you going to convince council that it needs to be done?
We'll start with Cam this time.
Well, this one's gonna blow everybody's socks. I've been saying for years that if you take a look at the amount of usage that that park has had, it's been relatively little. I worked that park a lot when it was treed. I picked the gravel clean in the kids' play area. Here's my suggestion, and I have spoken to this, not publicly to this extent, but where the access road is at the north end is a deeded access for us, for our village. The access that's between the two houses at the other corner of the park, beside the Chenier home and Stollard's place, whomever is there now, that's son, I believe, there's the other access to the park. So, if you look at that park, if we go in with a road there and we come out with a road at the north end back onto Cliff, we have enough possibility there to put in probably 20 more homes backing onto the other properties. I know that it is a far-fetched idea, and I know that it will take some personal space away from people. However, for the amount that that park is used, we have a serviced area of town that could relatively quickly house a bunch of development. I know it's not going to be a happy thing with everybody, and I know it's pushing it, but that's what council is going to hash around, is that kind of an idea. So I'm prepared to step up and say it. I know that there are people that aren't going to like it, but I don't know how the geotech has to happen in that area of town, but I am imagining that it would be lessened with that type of a development than it would be up in the sands at the other end where Mesa Vista Drive turns to gravel now at the cattle guard, at the cattle crossing. So that's the kind of thinking that I have in my head. I'm not saying that I'm correct. I'm not saying that the community would like that, but it's that kind of thinking that's going to make us progressive in 20 years. Thank you.
And Wayne?
Thanks, Cam. I think that's an interesting concept, and certainly it's forward. I think we take a look at the utilization of that area, and maybe there's another option. Maybe we look at going back to vegetation that's native vegetation. We look at it as a showpiece. That's just one option. Maybe part of it's used as development, but I think it has some opportunity, and I think it would need some study and some a closer look. You don't want to get into something that might wind up like we had down at Seashell, where you wind up with a problem on the other side from a geotechnical point of view. That's all. Thank you. I think it needs more study.
And Daryl?
What my understanding is of Mesa, that there isn't, I'm not sure how much shifting is going on up there. And so I'd have to understand that better, obviously. But in terms of the usage, in terms of I want to get back to looking at a whole idea of trails and signage and what have you, and try to pull that type of tourism here. Could that be part of what a solution in that way, right? Like as I said, you look at places, people go, you see advertisement for Penticton and what have you, that people travel around to hike around here, these trails. So could that be adapted in that way? But in terms of development up there, my understanding from talking to some residents is that there's, like I said, that we have a graveyard land and all that there's no boxes in the ground because of the shifting. So I don't know exactly what that means for other types of development up there.
We just need to take a 2-minute pause so I can restart the Zoom meeting because it's going to end. Okay, I'm going to send you a new link. Okay, Wayne?
Thank you.
Yep. Think about a new question.
And read freely. And basketball for years.
Well, it isn't advertised. That part is not
And they have fun meetings. Yeah.
And they put the best in voice.
You know,
That was the dangerous thing.
dangerous thing. Did you go on your last? Everything is so good. And we don't know.
Well, and on the B side, of course, they all do something on the screen.
Yeah.
Yes. But, I was. There is this. Every part, and there's other parts. And you know, they'll have played stuff. It's in, you know, the soft stuff. No, I don't have to go shopping. Yeah. And we'll be doing another free one. And we'll be doing another free one. Yes. But it's I think that's up there. But it's an idea. It's an idea. Just what he does with the park. Big four houses.
Well, how much, what part is the sprinkler?
I thought this was growth. I thought that was. I think it is.
So, wow, it's used to
Is the access. Yeah, there's a secondary back as we develop that. But everybody else in the basin should know what that is. And we don't. Yeah. See, it was done. And it would go on the website, on the website. So to look forward to it. No. So that would be yeah, right. But there, yeah, but you can, there is a road that you can actually drive down by the water. Okay, California. They did have it. That was when you went from the base, from dunes down and then down. Yeah. All right. They had done it at one time. Maybe they didn't keep it up. Because we got.
Hi, Wayne.
Hi, I had to reload the app, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No worries. You want to put your video on?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you for your patience.
That is the only way.
Back now, so does anybody else have any questions for the candidates?
My question is, so we have a lovely green space that is not taken care of whatsoever. And if you take that away, what other green space do we have up there? None. It's fine that you can go hiking in the dunes, but one of these days that's not going to be ours anymore to use. So I would like to keep a green space up on the mesa. It can be
there a
answered by
question there?
all of you. Well, you know, doesn't matter.
What is the question then?
The question is, why would you take away a green space that's the only green space up on the mesa?
We'll start with Daryl this time. All right.
Well, for me, I think that the biggest selling point that we have is the weather, is this idea of ecotourism, what have you, this kind of stuff that we can use that as a growth for attracting people to come in for day visits and what have you. We saw, just last weekend, right? We had that race that was going on with teams from around the globe and what have you. So there's opportunities there. But as far as I didn't have that platform to take it away, so I'm just going to hand it over to somebody who might have that.
I could see the fire in her eyes as soon as I said it. But I want to remind everybody that the question from Deb was, how do we pay for it? And that was the end of Deb's question. And if we develop a park like that already has the infrastructure close, I think it would be much easier to find a development company or a developer that would want to do something like that. And if that were the case, then we make the green space at the upper cemetery, or we make the green space in the dunes and dedicate that to green space with much less expense, still in the same neighborhood, and develop what's there now and be able to sell that property, or sell that property to the developers and then they sell it back to bring people into town. And that was the end of the other question that nobody really got a chance to answer, but that's why I led that way.
And Wayne?
Yeah, and I'm saying just let's my approach would be take a look at it. Take a look, not saying take away a green space or build. What I'm saying is let's come up with a plan based on the best information that we have in order to determine the best use. And I don't think we're there yet. Thank you.
Hi, Kevin again. Getting away from green spaces, all three of you would be new to the council, and I know, Ken, you've had a lot of interaction with the council being a former employee. How would you feel, how do you feel about present council's relationship with the neighboring First Nations that we have around us? And do you bring something to the table in improving relationships or clarifying relationships? Thanks to all three.
We'll start with Cam this time.
Primarily since I've come to town, my interaction, if we want to call it that, with the local First Nations community has been through Parks and Rec. Events at the park, like the walk the other day, the running the native hockey tournaments at the arena, dealing with the growing up of a lot of our Aboriginal children from the area, helping them skate, watching them while their parents went down to get groceries while they were public skating, that type of thing. So my interaction's been huge, but my interaction has not been on a political level. So going forward, there are a lot of people in our world that I have dealt with in the past, and it's all intermingled. They're all talked about the bike trails. We have a gentleman that lives in town that has repeatedly gone to administration and asked about the mapping, a closed course for training, the use of some of the property to develop for skills training, that type of thing. And I would love to say his name, but I don't have permission to do that, so I'm not going to, but he is a long-standing member of our community. Those of you that are into that type of thing will know who he is. So there's a good example of interactivity, and I have a huge respect for those communities in our area. And I'm not just talking about the Ashcroft band. A lot of people, the Antoines, and a lot of the people that I've dealt with and helped, and they've helped me over the years, have come out of the Bonaparte as well. Thank you.
And well, next is Wayne.
Yeah, and I think, I don't have enough specific information on our current council and the interaction with the communities that surround us. But I will say that it's important. As a matter of fact, it's a priority that we maintain that contact. And I don't have the history that Cam does of the various First Nations. But in going back to one of the previous questions, it's an opportunity for partnership. It's an opportunity for growth. And I think it needs to be fostered. Thank you.
Daryl?
Yeah, I think the political reality is that First Nations have a lot of power, and we need to partner with them as closely as possible to push for common causes, and so that takes a close relationship. Particularly, this is the only way that we're going to really see progress moved in some of these issues, because like I said, a community of 1,700 people, aging community 1,700 alone isn't going to have a heck of a lot of political voice. So you get the partners where you can, and like I said, they've got a powerful voice. That's how you create those relationships. I think is through the type. You got to have an understanding of that history, where they come from. My mother attended residential school. I think I have a good understanding. I've studied Native history. It was one of the majors, and I'd written about Native history. And I think that kind of understanding go a long way to bridge it, create those bridges.
Question over here.
Yeah, Linda LeBroy. I had an interaction this afternoon, actually, when I was out walking with a man who came to me and he said, I said, how you doing? He goes, not good. I said, what's going on? He said, I can't find a place to live. He said, I'm homeless. And he said, and I can't have a campfire here when I live in my tent because campfires are banned. And he said, I don't know what to do. He said, I'm throwing my stuff away. He's at his wit's end. It's not the first time that people have come to me at church and said, help me. I don't know how to help. I don't know where, and granted, politics is not my forte. But my question to you is, where do you see, what vision do you have for providing I'm also on Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, so just so you see my point of view. What is Ashcroft doing and thinking in terms of, and what are you as candidates thinking in terms of providing housing that is affordable? All right, there's housing that simply becomes part of the market, but there's also the ability to provide small units that can be used to bring people out of homelessness and into a home-like situation. So I'm just wondering what the three of you think about that, and where you're sort of on that spectrum.
Well, I'll start with Wayne this time.
I'm going to, one of the things that endeared me to Ashcroft when I first came here was we can name our homeless on one hand pretty much. And what's happened is the way that the community pulled together to find some interim housing for some of those individuals. And it was a community effort. It was not one individual effort, but actually a community effort to find housing for some of the folks. And you know who they are, but I won't mention their names. But it worked out in the long run, and the community pulled it together. And that is something that I think the community, it's a community issue, it's a social issue, and I think it's something that, with the right attention, gets resolved. I'm not so sure that, when I was at high level, we rezoned a commercial establishment into residential so we could have a hostel. And high level was a little bigger, but we also had 2 youths freeze to death, one year and one the year prior. So we had to do something. But, you know, I see it right now at the level that it is in Ashcroft more as a social issue for individuals than a community initiative. Sorry, that's my opinion.
Next we'll go to Cam.
Thanks. As previously mentioned, we are right on the average for if the numbers that I read are correct and were presented at UBCM, we're right on that average. And where it appears, talking about David's question of gapping to the other governments, it appears that the monies that are set aside for making that bridge are to deal with people on a larger scale, like the developments that are going on in Kamloops right now. So, interim solution, immediate solution would be, in my opinion, to help them find housing or get them into the system in Kamloops. I know that sounds like we're washing our hands of them. However, if the facilities are there, the money is being spent there, and the federal and provincial governments are bridging the money into those larger centers because they have the counseling. They have, I can't remember the name of the association, but I know there are a few of them in there that help with exactly this. And we don't have the facility here, nor do we have the expertise here to do that. However, we do have a transit bus that runs. We do have the facility for a lot of people that are caring to take them in. and give them that initial start or introduce them to that initial system. Thanks.
Daryl.
Yeah, I think I probably know who you're talking about, Linda. It's an awful situation. And, you know, there's, I know where some of these people are living, you know, just some of it's just drug related, drug history. Then some of them are now clean and, right, they're looking for places to live. And like I said, how do you solve that? I think Cam is right. There isn't a lot of options here other than you were aware of it. There's people we see, you know, I just think of Sandy Brown and his tragic death. And he was the day that he was going to go off to rehab. These things, how do you do that? You know, the River Inn was housing some of these people and what have you. You know, you can ask provincial government for, you know, like I said, and of course there's a certain amount of low-income housing that we have to provide anyhow. That's provincially driven mandate. So you go along that lines, but for immediate, you know, short of opening up your own homes and what have you, the answers are where the facilities currently are. They have to be put towards Kamloops or other areas with those type of facilities that Ashcroft just doesn't have. I mean, I'm open to, you know, anything, you know, but if I could solve homelessness, I wouldn't be running for town council, I'd be running for prime minister.
Any other questions? In the back there?
Dave Bergson again. I'm constantly amazed as I move around town and talk with people at the incredible talent and experience and wisdom that exists within the residents of this community. And I believe that it is totally untapped and totally ignored. And I believe that that might be a partnership that could transform some things, especially if you looked at one or two things and created a little team of champions to work at. So I'm just making an observation. It really isn't a question, but I'm hoping that you will tap into the untapped resources that the community has.
Do you want to speak to that?
Well, you know, I went around town and I spoke to pretty much every business that I could. And like some of these people have never, like I said, for example, the curator at the museum had never been asked his opinion on what could improve the museum, let alone the town. He had lots of great ideas, actually. You know, we were just talking about, you know, could this stuff be done with film festival? I've been involved in film, directed and produced film, but that even just talking to the restaurant owners and what have you, and they, you know, what their suggestions were, and they said the common themes that run through the town and through, like I said, through signage and what have you, you know, to try to promote. A lot of people go through town, up through Highway 1, and they think Ashcroft is Tim Hortons on the hill. It's hard to believe. But we have had 40 years of not promoting this town properly, in my opinion. And that's what's happened. People could live in Prince George, come down, and not have any idea this exists. And that's how you fix these problems. That's exactly right. I don't have to come up with all the ideas. I don't have to come up with many ideas. The ideas are already here in town. It is about talking, taking an effort, walking the streets. How I wrote books with my brother. I wrote a book on Dieppe. I started in 1987. interviewing veterans for the South Saskatchewan Regiment with him. I was 17 years old. But to really understand what happened that fateful day in 1942, I flew out to Dieppe and I walked the beaches there. And I remembered the words of Herman Keyes, who was buried down on, and he had 2 pillboxes shooting at him, and he's got his gun and praying. I found, where is he? Where is that? I figured out pretty much where he was. And that's how you understand something. You have to take the effort to walk the streets and talk to the people. And that's what I'm going to do.
Wayne, do you have any comment or response?
Well, I'm sorry, I've only got about half the question, so I want to be sure. If you could paraphrase it for me, that'd be great. I have an idea, but I'd like to be sure. Please.
Basically, I was stating that there's an untapped human resource in this town of people who have all kinds of experience that is not being appreciated or encouraged to be applied to making the community better.
Okay, great, David. You're right, absolutely. There is a tremendous amount of untapped potential in this town. We talked about it with the Strata Council. There are people with talents and abilities that are new to town, that are come to town, and we can tap those abilities and the strengths that they have in development of certain areas. But one of the key areas that we have is we need to do a better job of being ambassadors for Ashcroft, getting it out there, marketing the town, getting it on the map. We have some unique facilities here that are well known in the region. Certainly Desert Hills, certainly the bakery, it has a tremendous draw. It's well known in Kamloops, but using the resources and the people that we have to be ambassadors for our community and draw people in. And it's tapping the potential of those individuals. Thank you.
Yeah.
David, you tapped into part of my closing statement, so my closing statement's going to be a little bit shorter, but in my time here, I have watched and have recently watched a lot of young families come home, bring their children, purchased my shop in Friendship Auto. I just relinquished my duties at the villa that Wayne just spoke of, and we have a young man who's taken over that he's a newlywed with a baby on the way in December. So I've been able to step aside there gracefully because of bodily issues with me, but we have a new member to the village that has come back from 20 years away. I think we have an incredible source to tap into here, but we also have, including myself, a senior population. So mental fortitude is a whole different thing than physical fortitude, and we do have these young people coming home. There's been a massive change in the 22 years that we've lived here. When we moved here, it was really quite geriatric, and I think that we actually are swinging the other way. Look at the use in the arena. Speaking of a facility that is locally renowned, look at the use in the arena. The hockey program has almost tripled in size in the last 12 years. The Beer Belly players are scrambling this year to find Beer Belly members because they're aging and they're looking after their kids and they're keeping them home. So I do see an inversion to some extent, and I do see a talent pool that is coming home. Thanks.
One more question. We have a very active school with, I think, maybe 140 children in it, which of course then you have another 200 parents. So we're looking at 300 kids right in Ashcroft, or 300 people right in Ashcroft. But there doesn't seem to be a good relationship between the school and the school board and the council and the people of Ashcroft. how can you see that improving so that there's a better relationship between the two?
We'll start with Cam this time.
Deb, honestly, I can't address it. My kids grew up elsewhere. My daughter that works for the village now came to the village as a summer student, not in the schooling system, and then went on to study in Montreal, and then in Kamloops to get her water and her wastewater tickets so that she could come back here and work. And there's another example of someone coming back, but I cannot answer your question. When I get to council, hopefully that ability, that opportunity will be there, and I'll be able to use the experience of having those children in the system. But as far as local knowledge goes, I'm sorry, I don't have any.
Daryl?
So are you asking how to improve the relationship between the school board and the council?
Or the school in general?
The school in general and the council. Well, as far as the school board, that would be, you know, these are personal relationships, right? That's get to know each other, and that would be, because I don't have a school age child. You know, I haven't really paid attention to what was going on that level. But it would start with getting to know the people on that board, and hopefully there would be a dialogue there, open dialogue. But as far as if you're looking at improvement to the school itself, no, you're just talking about just the relationship between it. Feedback between that, right? I would think that you know, it's the same approach I would take at anything, right? Which is you have to just be aware of it and go out and ask the questions, right? You can't wait for people to necessarily come to you. This is about I'm running on the candidacy of taking an aggressive approach to all of this, going out of my way, not waiting anymore. This community has sat back far too long and waited to react to what's been handed to them. I think those days have to end. So that's the approach I've taken. So that would be the approach I'd approach to any issues with the school or school board.
And Wayne?
Yeah, and I have a similar approach as well. Yeah, it's a collaborative approach. Find out, where the opportunities are with the students, with faculty, with the board, and then see if there's some common ground and some opportunities for development. Maybe it means a classroom speech. Maybe it means a talk about what council is. Maybe someday we get a future councillor out of that initiative. But the opportunity is to go in and find out where the opportunities are so they can be developed and acted on. Thank you.
I had a question, but before I ask it, I can suggest that as a member of the school board, there's always an opportunity to have communication, and there's always an openness to exchange communication with the village, with members of the community, and there are opportunities every month for the public to come and participate in the school board meetings. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. So the opportunity for communication is definitely wide open. We have a very open-minded and very approachable school board. My question, though, with regards to the vision that I'm hearing from each of the three candidates about Ashcroft, developing Ashcroft, I'm wondering if I'm hearing pragmatism, I'm hearing visionary thinking, I'm hearing infrastructure. I'm wondering if the candidates could share their vision in terms of how they see the socioeconomic development of Ashcroft over the long term, particularly in the context of preserving the aesthetics of the community that attract people to the community, and how to enhance those aesthetics as well.
Just wanted to mention too, we're almost approaching the time, so this will be the last question for the candidates, and then it'll be closing. And of course, there's every opportunity to speak to these fine gentlemen during your days and walking around town. So we will start with Cam.
Thanks again, John. Earlier this year, I was invited to be on a walk with the TNRD on an economic development walk around town. When Debbie and I first moved to town, there was a Revite committee set up at that point to look at what we saw as the future for the look of the downtown. And that's where the driving of the Western theme, and that's where the overhangs on the sidewalk and all of that came from. It came out of that Revite, and it was an addition to the previous Revite. But as time has changed since that point, and we've become more and more technologically driven, and the strength of corporations like the Home Hardware have come in. And when that changed from being an early to a Home Hardware, there was a drive there to have Home Hardware posting on a Home Hardware building, and so there rightly should be. The overhang on the sidewalk at the Home Hardware was done when it was the early bird. So it fits that Revite, but we have to walk that Revite into these times. So socioeconomically, if we're talking about the aesthetics, then that walk that we took earlier in the year with the TNRD and whatever is going to progress from that, it will be a very good first step. And it was a step that I and several other business owners were able to give our opinion. And administration was on that walk as well as the other councillors. So we all had a good chance. And then there was a debriefing back in the community hall. So it has been somewhat addressed even in the last year in my time. Thanks.
Daryl, next.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think you look at the towns like in Washington State, for example, Winthrop, Leavenworth. Yeah, I mean, that look attracts tourists. And I think it's very vital that it continues here and enhanced where it can be in the downtown. That, of course, and then we get into, we got empty lots downtown, and this is all, as we go and try to get those developed, I'm not sure, about height ordinances to me aren't the biggest deal. It's the actual front of the look of the town, right? So certain things that we can be flexible on. Other things that have been brought up to me was, trees cannot be brought downtown and things like that, and I think all of that stuff's important had somebody bring up that they had, there's a park bench here and the trees over here. Somebody who's going to sit in the sun, right? So just things that can be done that make more sense, but all of that stuff, it plays into livability, tourism, and all that. Everything has to be looked at a critical eye of, is that the right? Just little things that are there's no money involved in making the right decision sometimes, but that's how we have to look at it, that we maintain that historic Ashcroft brand, and we go forward on that very carefully on how we develop it.
And Wayne?
Yep, I love that question. I really do. I really love that question. I see our community as an opportunity in itself. All right, marketability, social and economic development comes from the sense of community. I think that can be developed. I think our community, our businesses, our tourism business can be developed, but our uniqueness as a community will draw people here. People look for places to live. We had mentioned that we have young couples coming back because it's a community. The housing is pricey but affordable compared to some other locales. But certainly from Vancouver, people are moving up and that. And if we have the residences available for those individuals that want to come to town, that's going to be self-sustaining. And if we plan it, we can do that so we don't lose our community culture. We don't get to the point. We have some unique, our arts, our community, our theater, these are unique and they're marketable. And I think That's going to be our engine for growth. Unless we get a major industrial development, which should be a challenge, we need to look at what kind of community are we going to start growing and how do we get there. And I love that question. We've got opportunity, we've got to change the downtown core, we've got to support the businesses that we have. Not many towns this size have 3 restaurants or 4 restaurants. It's unique. Thank you.
All right, well, that will conclude the question portion of the evening, and we'll with the finishing, the closing remarks, and we'll start with Daryl, then Cam, then Wayne. And a minute each for each candidate.
Well, I want to thank the 2 gentlemen that I'm running against. I think they're have very well thought out ideas and plans themselves. The crux of what I want to look at, especially for 1 year, I look at it as a 1-year position, and then we'll look about what goes on afterwards. And that is, what can we do to maximize the assets that we have in this town, quickly and easily? And that includes from the curling rink. There's sand. It's a sand-based curling rink, right? They handed a $1 million grant to Merit to put cement in. You only have 40 people or so. The curling is unsustainable. So you have to look at something like that and say, how can we turn this into a year-round facility? Can we get a grant for this? Can we look at all of this? Are we maximizing the museum? Are we looking at, what are we doing to help the businesses that are existing here today? That's the stuff that I'm running for. Thank you.
Cam?
I'm sorry, my hand got a little shaky there a couple of times. My left arm's a little buggered, and this cord is pretty tight. Thanks, Tom. We have an extremely unique village. Only desert in Canada. Lowest average humidity in Canada. That lends itself to being not only vibrant, but it leads to natural health, and it leads to natural vitality. There's no doubt about it. We have an amazing public works crew. And I'm not saying it because I was on it. I'm saying it because I've been there and I know what they go through on a regular basis and some of the heat that they take on the streets like we as council will. We also have an amazing administration, monetarily and organizationally. And I implore everybody and anybody to come to those meetings and watch them work those meetings and watch them lead council in those meetings, even though council is taking the ideas to them. They are controlled, they are encouraged, and they are facilitated somewhat by the abilities of the professionals that we have in the crew, and they are true professionals. So we have 3 candidates determined to help us grow and prosper. Safely and prudently is the way that needs to happen. Going forward, I invite anybody who wants to run. Only one of us will be, but in a year from now, that slate will open again. Please join us. Please learn the movements there if you're planning on running in those positions down the road. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Good luck, Joe.
All right.
And
I want to thank everybody, Mike. I want to thank everybody for the patience as we soldiered our way through this, through the Zoom meeting. I appreciate the patience, I really do. As this evening's discussion draws to a close, I want to thank all the candidates for stepping forward and sharing their visions. I also extend my gratitude to you, the residents of Ashcroft, for attending, asking questions, and taking part in the democratic process. Thank you. Although I could not be here in person tonight, I remain fully committed to listening to you, learning from you, and representing your voices. The strength of Ashcroft lies in its people and its community. I will always strive to ensure that every voice is heard and respected. I believe in collaboration, not division, and I'm ready to work with council and administration to ensure that our infrastructure planning reflects both our current realities and future possibilities. It includes safety. Let us protect what we cherish about Ashcroft while preparing thoughtfully for tomorrow. Thank you again for your time, your patience, your care, and your continued engagement. Thank you.